America is preparing to deliver the most painful blow to the Kremlin. Donald Trump makes it clear. The era of soft sanctions is over. If Russia does not stop the war, the world must cut off its oxygen.
Any country that does business with Russia will face very serious sanctions.
The US president is ready to sign a new package of sanctions against the Russian Federation. According to Reuters, the White House has already signaled Congress. The 47th president will approve the bill, but only on his own terms. If it includes a provision that secures for him the personal, exclusive right to make the final decision on whether to impose sanctions or not. This is exactly what becomes the main bargaining chip.
For the White House and the president, it has always been important that the sanctions package contains a clause guaranteeing the president the right to make the final decision on sanctions. Therefore, if this is included, I think the president will consider signing the bill, said a source in the White House.
The bill was authored by Republican Lindsey Graham and Democrat Richard Blumenthal. The document provides for 500% tariffs on imports from countries that purchase Russian oil, gas, and uranium. The goal is not just to strike at the Kremlin, but also to cut off the lifeline to all of Moscow's partners who continue to support the financing of the war.
At this point, Trump is determined to put additional pressure on the Russian Federation, particularly on its oil market, quite actively.
Trump's new sanctions could deal a devastating blow to the Kremlin's economy. The Russian oil market risks losing its key buyers. India, China, and Middle Eastern countries are under threat. Trump, meanwhile, proposes to expand the list of targets and add Iran to the sanctions list, a country that helps Moscow circumvent restrictions and strengthen oil schemes.
When we clearly understand that 60% of Russian oil is bought by China and the Americans are against it, are unlikely to escalate any forms of sanctions, especially after the meeting between Xi Jinping and Trump. Essentially, they have taken a one-year timeout on imposing mutual sanctions. Most likely, part of the Russian oil market in China will remain. At the same time, countries that, for example, were among the top buyers of oil by volume, the second and third largest buyers, namely India and Turkey, are now actively seeking alternative sources of supply.
While overseas they are preparing to deliver a decisive blow, RFI is dealing with the consequences of yet another sanctions package. At the end of October, the US introduced a new package of sanctions against the Russian oil sector. Rosneft, Lukoil, and 31 of their subsidiaries have come under the restrictions.
They have already been seriously shaken. The Russian market has dropped sharply. The price of Urals has indeed fallen dramatically. And at the same time, yes, as of today, there is a very serious problem with foreign assets, particularly those of Lukoil. At the same time, we've already heard that the American company Chevron has received preliminary approval from the US Treasury Department to negotiate with Lukoil about purchasing their foreign assets. The approximate value of this package is estimated at around $20 billion. Well, in any case, such developments are underway, and we're watching closely. That is, we need to understand that the assets we're talking about are essentially the tools through which the Russian Federation sells its oil. If these tools end up in other hands, and Russia will have significantly fewer opportunities to maintain the current volume of oil sales it has today.
If Trump does end up signing the bill and countries reduce their purchases under US pressure, the blow to Russia's budget revenues will be catastrophic. Even Russian propaganda will no longer be able to hide the real economic consequences, and the Kremlin will feel pressure it hasn't faced throughout the entire full-scale war.
Until we see the final version of the bill, until it is, at the very least, approved by the majority of the American parliament. In this situation, it's nothing more than, let's say, threats.
Trump is increasing the pressure on Putin, but
this happened. There's nothing you can do about it.
The US is increasingly pushing Russia out of the Middle East, causing the Kremlin dictator to lose his foothold in Syria.
You can't be afraid. Anyone who starts to get scared will lose everything right away. But it's absolutely necessary to understand what might happen.
America is preparing to deploy a military contingent at the air base in Damascus. Syrian sources note that it's not just about a military presence, but also about creating a center for intelligence, refueling, logistics, and humanitarian missions. At the same time, Syria will officially retain sovereignty over the facility.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
For Trump, it's simply important to demonstrate the success of his policy in the context of establishing stability in the Muslim world. Overall, I think this is part of a corresponding policy that is generally connected to the Middle East region. In other words, overall, Trump is focused on establishing and maintaining stability in the Middle East in a way that would not interfere with or disrupt oil extraction.
The new base will be located near Syria's southern borders, close to areas that are planned to become a demilitarized zone as part of the upcoming pact between Damascus and Tel Aviv. The mediator is the administration of US President Donald Trump, who is personally overseeing the negotiations.
The United States currently expects that there will be a new governing regime in Syria that, at the very least, will be quite loyal and supportive to Israel. This change is anticipated to help stabilize the overall situation in the region and, as a result, will likely contribute to reducing tensions. So the main goal here is to reduce tensions, to ensure that there are no new escalations, and for the United States so that there is no need for a constant US military presence, a large-scale US military presence in the Middle East. According to
Reuters, American C-130 transport planes have already conducted test landings at the base. Local staff confirmed that American specialists have been arriving there in recent weeks. Already on Monday, November 10th, Trump will hold a meeting with the new Syrian leader Ahmed Asharawi at the White House. This will be the first visit of the head of the Syrian state to the United States.
For Ashar, this is another step toward recognition of his legitimacy, even though he is not technically an elected president, but nevertheless, no one seems to pay attention to that. In other words, yes, he is being recognized by the President of the United States. For him, obviously, this is a significant personal victory that will allow him to strengthen his power. On the other hand, for Trump, this is a way to demonstrate that his Middle East policy is successful. So I think this is more of a mutually beneficial arrangement.
Let us recall that on October 15th, the president of Syria, Ahmed Ashar, arrived in Moscow to meet with the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. The negotiations took place in the Kremlin. We
maintain diplomatic relations.
Well, can you really call them relations? Just a few years ago, Russia was threatening to kill Ashar. Putin changes his rhetoric quickly. Moreover, the Kremlin supported Assad's regime and fought against those who wanted to overthrow the dictator. Assad fled to Russia and is still hiding there. For decades, Russia held sway in Syria, but now it has found itself outside the key processes. After the fall of Assad's regime, the Kremlin lost its military bases and political influence in the region, and the United States took over the vacant position.
It's clear that the new Syrian authorities are bargaining. Who will make the better offer? And so far it seems that the offer from the United States looks more attractive to the new Syrian authorities. And if things continue in this direction, it's quite possible that, even though there won't be any formal break with Moscow, Russia will clearly lose its position. But still, I think that in any case, it's not right to say that. Right now, Moscow's position in Syria is comparable to its position during Assad's time.
Russia is losing its influence on the world stage, which points to the failure of Vladimir Putin's foreign policy. And this is only the beginning.